Hey all, welcome to your first year of drum lessons, week 26, Drumset edition. My name is Penny Larson and I am really happy to have you with me today. In today's Drumset lesson, we are going to follow on a topic that we talked about on Wednesday in our drum pad video. And that is, what can I do about my weak hand? Most of us are going to find that one hand or the other is more of our leading hand. The hand that you use to open the door, to brush your teeth, to brush your hair, to throw a ball with. Usually that's going to be one hand, and usually that hand is going to be significantly more adept at doing everything and more comfortable at doing everything than your weaker hand. Partly that's a self-fulfilling prophecy in that it feels natural to open the door with your right hand, so your right hand gets more practice doing things than your left hand, which kind of sits there. One simple way you can combat that is to do those everyday things with your left hand. I think that is an interesting but not hugely important technique to engage in. More so, I think, just directed study, building your left hand is an even more important thing. And so today's lesson is going to be a little bit different than some of our other lessons. There's no handout today. You can see I've got no printout on my drums to read from. I'm just going to be talking to you about concepts that I think can help build your weaker hand. We're going to talk a little bit about things we've done in the past, but mostly this is going to be a bit of a conceptual lesson and some generalities and general thoughts I have. We'll talk a little bit about our weak foot too, but not too much. For me, my weak foot is definitely my left foot. It doesn't have to be, your weak foot doesn't have to be the same side as your weak hand. An interesting thing about humans is, in many ways, we are very symmetrical, but like most beautiful creations of nature, very few of us are perfect. I'm going to say none of us are perfectly symmetrical. Some of us are more symmetrical than others, but everybody has some sort of imbalance somewhere. And the thing about drumming, we've got two sticks and we've got two pedals. We want to keep those as balanced as we can when we want to. There are lots of times when we want one hand or one foot doing something that's stronger than the opposite hand or foot. But when we need to just play an even single stroke roll, we really want to be able to do that. And so we need to build our left hand up to make that happen. Let's start with some really easy stuff, and then we'll gradually talk about more. I am going to assume that you have at least two toms and a snare and a bass drum and a hi-hat. So I'll talk a little bit about a bigger kit, but I'm going to assume that you're dealing with two toms, a bass drum, a snare, hi-hat, and ride, and maybe a crash, but we'll talk about that as we go. So first things first, the obvious answer is, well, just play your hi-hat with your left hand. Do this just by itself at first to get used to it. If you're comfortable playing those eighth notes with your left hand, just play that. Then play our really simple beat that we started with 6 months ago. 2, 3, 4. And when you do that, think about the volume that you're getting on your cymbal. And remember, the hi-hat, when most of the time, your hi-hat really shouldn't be, the loudest part if you're playing a groove. And so when you're playing your left hand, try and think about balancing the same way that you would with your right hand. I'm going to go back and forth a couple times to demonstrate what I'm talking about, just real quick. I won't do this with everything, but just so you can see that right hand, left hand thing. I'm trying to keep the sound the same. 2, 3, 4. The next step, so we've got that really simple quarter note back and forth. The next step is to go through all of our eighth note patterns with our right foot with our left hand. Remember, one of the things I've talked about is this concept of our body as a box. And the outside of the box being easier coordination than crisscrossing from corner to corner. Playing my left hand and my right foot is one such crisscross. So this is a little bit level up in degree of difficulty in terms of coordination. But let's take it stepwise, and hopefully, before you know it, your left hand won't seem like a weak hand. It'll just seem like your left hand. I'm going to improvise a little with eighth notes. And I'm going to use patterns that we've talked about and maybe a couple that we haven't talked about. But I'm going to stay with eighth notes and 2 and 4 on the snare. 2, 3, 4. Okay, that kind of thing. When you can choose to do this in either way. As we learn new patterns with our bass drum, say, you can either make sure that you're learning every variation there is, each hand leading, play it on a cowbell, play it on a closed hi-hat, play it on a stack, play it on your other hi-hat. Or you can kind of come back and focus and say, okay, now I'm going to work on my left-hand lead. There isn't really a right way. It's just which makes sense to you and which feels more comfortable with the type of progress that you feel best about making. One of the secrets to learning anything is to keep your frustration balanced, right? I love frustration. Frustration is the thing that keeps us getting better. I always pick something different. Let's pick something different. I am not good at water skiing, but I don't care. I feel no frustration about not being good at water skiing. And so I have no motivation to get better. I want to be a better drummer than I am. I feel great frustration that there are things that I want to do that I can't do. And that's what keeps me practicing all the time, is that frustration. But we need to keep our frustration level balanced, because if we turn up our degree of difficulty of our study too much too quickly, the frustration balloons out of control, and before we know it, the frustration is debilitating. It turns from an energetic agitation of, oh, there's this thing I want to do, but I'm going to go home and practice, and oh my God, did you see that drummer do that thing? I want to do that thing, right? It turns from that into, oh my God, I can't do anything. And, the truth is we all kind of go through those different levels of frustration. The trick is to try as much as you can to keep that frustration an excited agitation instead of a debilitating feeling that keeps you stuck. Okay, so if it makes more sense for when you're learning a beat with your right hand to say, hey, you know what, while I'm here, I'm going to learn it with my left hand too, do that. If it makes more sense to say, you know what, I'm going to spend some time working on my left hand today and I'm going to play a bunch of different stuff with my left hand lead, then do that. Whichever kind of rides your agitated excitement, frustration better. Okay, so we did eighth notes. Now let's do some quarter note ride with the left hand with some eighth notes. So now we're setting ourselves up for our offbeat 16th notes. Remember when we first did the quarter note ride and the bass drum on the eighth notes, and we've got that like single stroke roll kind of idea happening? So if that's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, the same thing is going to happen when we get to 16th notes. 1 E and 2 E and right? It almost becomes a single stroke roll for a little bit. So we need to develop that same coordination with our left hand and our right foot. So just that back and forth pattern sounds like this. Right, it sounds the same as it would with my right hand, okay? But that's it by itself. Now let's try and do some patterns. Same thing, I'm just gonna improvise and see what happens and play eighth note patterns. I'm still gonna keep with just eighth note patterns with my right foot, but now quarter notes with my left hand. 2, 3, 4. So now we're going to take it up one more level, but it's kind of the same coordination challenge. I'm going to go back to eighth notes on my hi-hat with my left hand, and now I'm going to start adding in 16th notes. And again, I'm just going to improvise and see what happens. I'm not thinking too much about patterns. I'm going to do this for a while, and I'm going to find one that feels tricky, and then we'll do that one repeatedly. I don't lead with my left hand. I don't play my ride pattern with my left hand too much. And so I'm pretty certain that I'm going to find one of these patterns that feels weird to me, and you'll probably notice. And we'll talk about it. And I'll talk about the coordination challenge, and then we'll play that pattern over and over again. This is a large part of the way that I practice. I will play, find something that I hear that my hands or feet are like, you know what, nope, can't do that. And then I'll work out what I'm hearing in my head with my hands and feet, and then play it over and over again. And depending on how much I like it, it will either have been my exercise for that day or something that will make its way into my playing. It all depends on, do I like it enough that I take the time to like write it down or record it and use it again the next day. It takes a while of playing something before it becomes a part of your playing. You can't just play something a couple times and integrate it into your playing. You need to, that's why we do things over and over again, right? And that's why a lot of times we do the same thing over and over again, is because we need that repetition to fully absorb the material. Okay, so let's try that example. So I'm going to play eighth notes and 16th note patterns with my foot. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so it feels like one in there, right? Doon, da doon, doon, da doon. That. There were a couple places where it got like a little weird, but those felt more like mistakes than okay. Was that a technical? Is that a technical difficulty, or do I need that chop? Right? There's a difference between making a mistake versus something that, from a coordination standpoint, you don't have under your control. This is like a really weird concept. Here's a pennies aside for a second. There's three broad categories of problems that I think about. So there's something that you can't do from a physical or technical standpoint, right? And if you try to do something like that, maybe you'll get lucky, but you also might not, right? It might just it might turn into a giant train wreck. There are mistakes that my drum corps instructors used to call mental mistakes, which are you can do the thing, but your brain just, I think people call them brain farts too, right? Your brain just shuts off for a second and you blow it. And there was no reason for you to blow it other than you stopped thinking about it for a second. And those are both sort of the extreme. In the middle is the things you can play pretty well, but you made a mistake. And it wasn't that you weren't concentrating, it wasn't that you zoned out for a second, it was just humans make mistakes, right? And right in that area is where you should figure out which of those mistakes are the things that you should work on and which are, oh, that was a mistake that will never happen, not never happen again, but that was a really random, weird mistake. I probably won't do that mistake again, right? So those three types of errors or mistakes, it's really important to have a handle on, if you, let's say that you've been drumming for a couple of years and you're doing okay, but you're not like a prodigy or anything, and you try to play, if you don't know this piece, you should go listen to this piece, The Black Page by Frank Zappa, which the original drummer was Terry Bozzio. And the reason it's called The Black Page is because there was so much ink on the page, so many notes, that the page figuratively turned black with all the notes. Sure, you could sit down and struggle with that and maybe even learn it after a couple months, but it probably wouldn't be a great use of your time because you're on that far end of errors or mistakes that just you're shooting too far beyond your ability. Likewise, if you've been playing for 20 years and all you play is really straight ahead, boom, bap, that's fine. And maybe you're working on really subtle gradations of your timing, which is cool, then you are taking it deeper, but you want to make sure that you're taking it deeper and you're not just walking on the path that you've already tread, right? That you're expanding your ability in some way. And that's that middle ground, right? Those kind of mistakes. And so what I was just doing, I was trying to figure out where that leading edge was for me. And I think it's that doom, da ba doom, doom, da ba doom, da da doom. Let's try that. So I'm going to play 1 EN, a 2 EN, a 3 EN, a 4 EN, a doom, doom, ba doom, 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 ba doom, doom, doom. Let's do that. That's a nice little pattern-based loop. 3 EN, a 4 EN, a. Yes, that's it. Aha! See? Okay, you get the idea. I don't want to make you guys watch me practice. But so you get the idea, right? Find that leading edge. I'm gonna practice that when we're done because that was kind of cool. A thing I do like to do is change up my right and my left a bit. and my left isn't as developed as my right as my ostinato voice. We haven't really talked about more advanced ostinato patterns with our right hand, let alone trying to do some of those with our left hand. We did a little bit a few weeks ago, but we haven't dived deep. Spoiler, we're going to start that process next week. So we could do any of those ostinatos that we did a few weeks ago with our left hand too, you know. Right, and you can see I'm working hard at playing that. Like I say, this is a thing I don't spend a ton of time doing, but this week is kind of about building your left hand. And my favorite way to do that, if I'm feeling like, oh, my left hand is really letting me down lately, switching to left hand lead is my first like go-to, oh, I need to work my left hand more solution. You can do crazier things, right? So think about if we play our hi-hat with our right hand. Well, if I play my ride cymbal with my right hand, if I cross over like this, I can suddenly play ride patterns with my left hand. This is a little bit extreme, but if you really want to think about what you're doing with your right hand when you cross over, this is a little bit farther, right? My left hand, the corollary really would be like this, right, to this. But our drum set's really evolved to favor this right hand lead. And originally people were playing on their ride cymbal, and the ride cymbal was more like here. And so, you know, if you're playing traditional, the drum set evolved with people thinking it was going to be an open-handed instrument. It was a while before drummers started crossing their hand over, and then, oh my, now we're all just crossing over. How did that happen? Well, because things evolve in interesting ways is how. But, so if you want to get a little bit of that crossover feel, you can do your crossover. You can also put your ride cymbal on your left side, but that pretty much is an extension of what we were just doing. I'm going to do really quick some demonstration on, I'll use my closed hi-hat, just to control the sound a little bit, but just so you can see, it's the same, in a lot of ways, it's the same coordination challenge, but now I'm doing that crossover thing. I've got to worry about my right hand the same way that I have to worry about my left hand here, right? So 2, 3, 4. Really awkward, right? When you're trying to build up dexterity or chops or whatever word you want to use, or coordination even, one of the best things to do is to make it more awkward than it needs to be, and then just work that to death, because then when you're actually playing, it will be less awkward. That's the simplest way I can think of to build your left hand in a drumistic and musical way. We're all practicing drum beats all the time. Learn them with your left hand lead. If you're working on a Latin groove, learn it with your left hand lead. If you've got a cowbell here, which is usually where I put my cowbell, put it over on your left side somewhere and work on your cowbell part with your left hand. If you're playing on the bell of the ride cymbal with your right hand, put a bell somewhere on your left and practice with your left hand. It's as easy as just use your left hand more. Having said that, let's talk a little bit more about things we can do specifically to work our left hand. It's a very natural, there's that, really basic fill that we all do. And like I say, I'm going to assume you only have 2 toms. If you have 3, you can do this all the way around. I'm going to play 16th notes, right, around the drums. What if I do that leading with my left hand? This is what I was saying about making things intentionally awkward, because when you're in the heat of the moment, you probably won't choose to play things awkwardly. You will usually default to the most comfortable way you can do something. But if you've practiced being awkward, the more comfortable way will be a million times easier. So that simple fill, just 16th notes. You can do paradiddles. We did our paradiddle exercise a while ago, and we started with our right hand. So paradiddle, 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 paradiddle. And it's designed to make moving around the drums easier. Well, what happens if I start with my left and instead of my right? Paradiddle, 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 paradiddle. So the answer is it gets a lot more awkward, and sometimes you hit your finger. But doing stuff like that, getting my right hand out of my left hand's way and leading with my left hand, that's the important thing, is letting your left hand take the lead. Think about leading with your left hand. It can be something as easy as, if I'm going to play a fill, digga digga crash, like 4 1, well, start with my left hand on 4 1, and then go back to the hi-hat or ride with my right hand, right? So 2, 3, 4. Right, something really basic, really simple like that. Think about hitting that 1 with your left hand. There's a great example of this. The band is Stereo Kai, and I forget the name of the tune, because of course I do. It's a German band, so I don't understand the lyrics. But I will include a link to it down below. And the drummer uses this really great, really simple paradiddle crash, right? And that is a useful thing in and of itself. Just learning right, getting really comfortable with crashing on 1 with your left hand. A lot of times it's really common. Maybe you got a drum set and you got a cymbal pack, and the cymbal pack came with a ride and 1 crash. And so your ride cymbal is over here and your 1 crash is over here. And you do this fill that's, 1 Iana, 2 Iana, 3 Iana, 4 Iana. And then you either have to cross way over with your right hand, which you can do. Sure, I was just saying do awkward things. Or what happens if the very last beat I do a paradiddle and then crash with my left hand? Well, that seems reasonable. Now I've just got to work on that left hand, right foot coordination problem, which once you do a few times, I keep talking about this box theory and crisscross coordination and blah. Once you do it a little bit, it's not like it's a deal breaker, right? The reason every time I talk about it a little and I say, it ups the difficulty a little, like a little, right? It's not, your right hand and your right foot, it's not like they're connected in a way that your left hand and right foot aren't exactly. They're still connected. It's just that you're less used to doing things that way is really what it is. So I said I was also going to talk today a little bit about the weak foot. And there's real simple stuff to do with your left foot. I'm going to keep it on the hi-hat pedal just because I'm not going to assume y'all have certainly not a second bass drum because you're probably smarter than me. But I'm not even going to assume that you have a double pedal. Let's just stay with hi-hat stuff. Do things with your hi-hat that you would do with your bass drum. And you can do this either with your left hand leading or your right hand leading, and it will still build your left foot. And the hi-hat pedal and the hi-hat cymbals, they won't do some of the things that you can do with your bass drum. The cymbals just don't react that way. Likewise, you can do things with your hi-hat pedal that you can't do with your bass drum. But I'm going to do some eighth note patterns as if I was playing my bass drum. So I'm not going to play any bass drum in these patterns. I'm going to treat my hi-hat, my left foot, as if it were my bass drum. And I'm going to switch up which hand I'm leading with. I'm going to play my ride pattern either on my little stack here or on my closed hi-hat. And I'll keep the snare going on 2 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... I don't know if you guys have noticed, I am getting way more comfortable with y'all and treating these a lot more like you were in the room with me, and I'm being a little goofy and a little experimental. Since the very beginning, you've seen my very talkative side. But one of the things I really like to do with students actually in the room, or even on private video lessons that I've been a little slower to do with these video lessons, is like push it a little bit and like fall on my face and let you see that and not edit that out, right? You're gonna see that one right at the end of that. I was kind of going for something. I kind of had it, and it just fell apart right at the end, right? And struck me funny. So that's a thing to do too, is think about your left foot as if it was playing. Because then, so now let's go back and forth, right? I'm gonna do patterns with my feet, but I'm gonna kind of trade. 2, 3, 4. And I got a little bit more, the snare drum fell off 2 and 4. I got a little bit more just letting it develop musically there than I really meant to. But that kind of thing, once your left foot is involved, right? What you're just seeing is more kind of the way I really like to play kind of generally, which is this sort of hybrid linear approach without too many ostinatos. Right? I think ostinatos are amazing examples of dexterity and independence and control, and musically they just don't hit the gut, right? That's a little high for the gut, but they don't hit me where I live, right? And so when I play, I tend not to do. It's more this kind of everything's kind of growing as like more one unified. Like I say, almost like a hybrid linear. Linear just means one thing hitting at once. More of like a hybrid linear approach. One more quick example that I like to do for left foot leading, and we'll do it with the left hand as well. as the right. So I'm going to play my left foot on the 8th notes, and I'm going to play my right foot on the offbeat 16th note. So I'm going to have 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. This is the way I've seen a lot of people play double bass when they lead with their left foot, right? You can just move your left foot from your hi-hat over to you, but if you do have that double pedal or, God forbid, a second bass drum, you can just move your left foot from the hi-hat pedal over to the second bass pedal, and now suddenly you're playing 16th notes. So let's try that. 1, 2, 3 E and a 4 E and a. Three guesses as to whether I lead with my left foot when I'm playing my double bass or I lead with my right foot. I lead with my right foot. That was weird. That was really weird. But so those kind of challenges are what's going to help your weak side. It's funny. It's so easy to build your left side physically. You know what to do. Jojo Mayer has this great way of saying it, that if you want chops, you just have to exercise. If you want to play music, you have to practice. Just play your left hand a lot if what you're worried about is the muscle control with your left hand, right? Right? I mean, okay, great. We have successfully built our left hand. But what are we going to do with it? Well, that's the more trying to practice. One last thing I want to talk about is this fun thing that I like to do a bit. It's just crossovers. And the pattern that I usually use goes back and forth between the floor tom and snare drum, and I will play it slowly for you. A little faster. And a teeny bit slower. If you notice, it starts out on the snare, but really the pattern kind of begins with the floor tom. If you listen for the da-da-da, that's where the pattern, that's what I'm thinking of. Those two notes are almost two for nothing, right? And then, I mean, you can do, we talked about making things awkward. You can do, sort of extreme versions of that just to do them. Right, things that you probably wouldn't do if you were playing, but things to work on your left hand lead and physicality and dexterity. Right, that Jojo Mayer quote from a couple minutes ago, that ties into this, because if you build your left hand chops without taking the time to also think about what that means for your moving around the drum set, it's kind of useless. Right? I mean, it's cool. Yay, my left hand is as strong as my right. But so what are we going to do with that? A thing that I like to do a lot is play my left hand on my hi-hat while I'm playing my right hand on either my other hi-hat or my stack or my ride cymbal. This started when I was really young. I don't remember it was a tune, this band I was in, we did a tune called Drifter, and I don't remember the beat exactly. Here we go. I'm demonstrating on the fly. Let me see if I can remember it for you. So it was like, so yeah, so I'm playing my left hand on the hi-hat opening while I'm playing my ride cymbal, and I'm going to play my snare with my right hand on 2 and 4 while I'm going to play a pattern with my bass drum. 2, 3, 4. And really all I'm doing with my hands is 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2. But because I've got a little bit more dexterity with my left hand than if I completely ignored my left hand, a pattern like that is easy. I almost don't have to think about it, right? I just got that single stroke roll, my left foot plays on the eighth notes, right? And then my right foot is gonna do, I think it was playing like doubling the bass line or something there. So today's lesson has been more talky and more kind of like, hey, try this thing, try that thing, try the other thing. The money point for this week, besides our reading review from Wednesday's lesson, the big takeaway is make sure you're working on your weak hand, right? Don't let your weak hand development just be down to chance, right? Make sure that you are taking proactive steps to work on your weak hand, whether it's your left hand or your right hand, doesn't matter. If you're ambidextrous, know that all other drummers are jealous of you, right? But very few people are truly ambidextrous, and so take some time developing your weak hand. It's in some ways that is about in some ways that can be like the least fun grunt work at first, but once your left hand starts, doing its thing and taking off, let's jump back for 1 second. Like I said, I don't really play open hand much. Every once in a while I think, oh, maybe I should. I kind of like crossing over. I'm old and I've done it for a long time. I kind of like it. Also, I play open-handed like this. The way that I solved the open-handed problem was to add a closed hi-hat and then use my left foot to almost play as if it is a hand on my hi-hat. I splash with my left foot all the time, right? So that was my solution, was just to move my right hand back over here like the early drummers on a closed hat. But so let's say that I'm going to play my left hand here, and I'm going to do what I want with my right hand. Well, let's see what happens with my right foot. I'm just going to do an eighth note pattern. 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that last idea was one that I came up with on the fly, right? So doing a 16th note fill with just my right hand and then crashing over here. And it took me a second because first my left hand wanted to follow my right hand, right? So if it's on 4, E, and 1, my left hand wanted to play the E and the in there too, especially the 4, E, and so it dragged my left hand off of the eighth notes. But the point of that was, I played a little bit on my second floor, Tom. I know I said I wouldn't. But just to give you the idea of if you're playing open-handed, it's funny, I'm kind of advocating for playing open-handed even while saying I don't, and I don't particularly care about playing open-handed. In terms of, back to that, agitated excitement, frustration thing, yeah, maybe I'll get to it at some point in my lifetime. For now, when I want to play open-handed, the second hi-hat is fine for me. Leading with my left hand isn't meh, it's all right. But if you play on a more normal drum set and you're not a goofball and you don't have an extra closed hi-hat, you don't have all these toms, the options that you get from leading with your left hand and playing open-handed, right? I've used that term, but that's what we call it because you're not crossing over, your hands are open. The options you get are really impressive, right? So it is worth at least thinking about maybe playing open-handed. I think I've rambled enough about this concept. Like I said, today was kind of special. It was more talky and conceptual than, no printout, no specific exercises. Mess around with this. If you feel like you need some exercises, we've had tons of handouts in the last 6 months. Pick one. Pick the 16th note pattern with the bass drum and, play your 8th notes with your left hand and play those 16th note patterns with the bass drum. We had that ostinato worksheet a couple weeks ago. Work on pick one ostinato and work on that with your left hand. The important lesson for today is just you don't want your weak side, to fall too far behind your dominant side. I started playing double bass drum. This is going to be about feet more than hands, but there it is. I started playing two bass drums when I was 17, and so I had been drumming for quite a while, but I hadn't really been taking Drumset all that seriously, right? When I was younger, oh my God, everything was marching percussion to me. And I took Drumset lessons and I played Drumset. And I played in the jazz band at school, and I played in the musicals at school, and blah, blah, blah. But man, if I could have been a professional marching snare drummer without joining the military, that might have been a career path that I would have pursued, right? And I'm really excited that there are actually people who figure out how to do that. When I was 17 and I left drum corps, I fell whole hog in love with the drum set, and I didn't fall out of love with drumline, but it stepped back, right? I sort of transitioned into drum set full time. Anyway, and so I started playing two bass drums right off the start, but I also was in love with John Bonham, and so my left foot really didn't suffer the fate that a lot of people who start playing two bass drums early on can suffer. My left foot was always pretty developed, so much so that sometimes people would say I was playing too much hi-hat with my foot, which honestly they meant it as a negative. I took it as a badge of honor and a compliment. But so I know like most of this lesson has been about our weak hand. I'm going to do a little bit of that with my hi-hat just so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm going to use my closed hi-hat with my right hand. I'm just going to improvise. But check out what I'm doing with my left foot. Keep it moderate tempo, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so just a little bit of goofing around, but so you get the idea, right? That it's really easy to let your left foot just kind of hang out there. You know what? Let me do some of the same thing, but now I'll be playing the hi-hat with my right hand, so you can see some of those open and close. 2, 3, 4. So stuff like that, right? Um, you want to make sure that even, the parts of your body that you're using less, like the hi-hat, to a large extent, you could play a whole night of songs with band, and your left foot, its job for the whole night will be to keep your hi-hats closed. You can totally do that, okay? But you don't want to fall into the trap of letting the parts of your body that can get away with being less used atrophy, right? And so it's important to think about developing your weak foot and your weak hand in really intentional ways, right? And then just have fun, right? There, in that last example, I was doing some ghost notes and some drags and stuff with my left hand. And, you can go a whole night playing tunes and not play one ghost note, just play backbeat, 2 and 4. But when the need and time and appropriate place in the music arises, if you have the ability to throw in those extra notes, everything's going to get deeper and richer. So don't let your weak side be neglected. I guess that's the motto for today. And I think I'm going to call it there. I think you get the idea. I think you understand enough different approaches to this concept, right? Like the other day we talked about much more physical kind of how do you build your left hand? And, if y'all missed Wednesday, I'll tell you the secret to building your weak hand that I gave away on Wednesday, which is patience and hard work. Okay, and that's true. But when you're trying to incorporate your weak hand on the drum set, there's this great book that I should mention too, and I'll include a link down below, by Rod Morgenstein called Drumset Warm-Ups, and it's page after page after page of, first you're going to move outward and you're going to make this kind of motion and then you're going to move this kind of way, and it's the same thing with the other hand, right? And stuff like that, doing really intentional, I'm moving this way and now I'm moving this way and now I'm moving this way, building those motions can help when you're on a gig and here comes a fill, and I'm a drummer, so I kind of get to improvise a fill. What fill do I want to do? If you have, this I can move any way I want to kind of motions built in, then the fill you play is up to you, right? So when you're building your weak foot or hand on the drum set, you want to make sure that you're thinking musically and not just, well, I build up my muscles, now what? Because if it's all about muscles, who cares, right? We talk a bit about playing faster, and I love playing faster. Playing faster is awesome. But there was this expression that I'm not sure if I invented this expression or if I heard someone else say it when I was a kid, and I use it for both loud and fast. And the expression is, it's fast, but where's the mustard, right? Or it's loud, and where's the mustard? And all I mean by that is, if a drummer plays super fast, it's cool, it's impressive, right? But I hope you know what I mean. Like earlier when I was talking about ostinatos not hitting me like in the gut, right? Right there. I don't want to punch my microphone. Hopefully, I apologize if you all made it through Wednesday's lesson. We had a little bit of a microphone snafu, and hopefully today is better. So I don't want to punch my microphone. So right there, right? Hopefully you know what I mean when I say music that just gets you, right? And fast is fast. It's cool. It's impressive. But impressive doesn't necessarily get me in the feels, right? My favorite drummer is Rod Morgenstein. Not sure if I've mentioned that in this playlist, in this series to y'all. but he's not the fastest drummer. He's fast. He has plenty of speed, but there's a million drummers that play faster. But no one that does what he does, right? And so it's all what you're going for. But if you're developing speed and muscle tone and muscle control, don't let it just be about speed. Speed is awesome, but speed is a tool, not the end result. Whew. All right, that turned into more of a sermon than I expected. So anyway, build your left hand. Don't let your left hand or your left foot atrophy. Don't let your left foot turn into just this thing that holds your hi-hat closed. Don't let your left hand turn into just this thing that whacks the snare on 2 and 4, right? Make sure you are taking active steps to develop your weak side. And if you want to take it, further than I have even, experiment with playing open-handed for 6 months. Say to yourself, I'm not crossing over for 6 months or a year or whatever. Or be wild and crazy and turn your drum set around and play backwards, right? There's a ton of things you can do to musically develop your weak side. Like I say, Wednesday's lesson, we talked a little bit more just about the physicality of building, especially your weak hand, right, on the drum pad. But today is more, okay, so what do we do with, now that I've developed my weaker hand, how do I use that? So that's going to wrap up this very talky few example episode of your first year of drum lessons. Next week, for both on the drum pad and our drum set lesson, we're going to be back to more, there'll be printouts for both of those. We're going to be back to more playing examples. Hopefully this lesson, I'd love to know what y'all thought of this lesson. If this felt like boring because you're just listening to me talk for, good Lord, 45 minutes, or if this felt like a worthy use of your time. I love a thumbs up as always. I will understand a thumbs down. Definitely got some thumbs down on Wednesday's lesson, I think, because of my mic issue. If you leave a thumbs down, I would love it if you comment, like, why. Like, random thumbs downs without comments are kind of not super helpful. Like, I guess you could be leaving a thumbs down and just saying, thumbs down, I never want to see this lady ever again. But if you're leaving a thumbs down thinking, this could be better, tell me what could be better. So find me on Facebook and Instagram at Penny Larson Drums. Next week, I am going to be doing at least one extra video next week. I'll tell you right off the bat. And hopefully this slew of snare drum videos that I filmed will be coming out soon as well, and maybe even the snare drum comparison videos and the drum set comparison videos will be gradually making their way out. Tomorrow is sort of penciled in as a big video editing day. So I hope you're well. I hope if you're having trouble keeping up with stuff, maybe this was a good week for you to catch up with stuff, because there's nothing really specific to do other than just generally practice your left hand stuff, assuming you're a righty, or your right hand stuff if you're a lefty. And if you're perfectly ambidextrous, take the week off and laugh at all of us who aren't. Okay. Keep practicing, y'all. And I will see you next week. I love you all, and I hope you are safe. All right, take care. Bye.